Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are jumping right into the very heart of Bitcoin Cash to unpack a concept you've definitely heard of, but maybe haven't fully visualized, the blockchain itself. Our goal today? We're going to completely demystify this incredible data structure. We'll start with a massive, wide-angle view of the macro network level, and then we're going to seamlessly zoom all the way down to the micro mathematical hashes that make the whole thing actually work. It's a seriously elegant system, and by the time we wrap up, you're going to have a crystal clear picture of how it all fits together.
Here is our map for today. We're hitting the chain of blocks, anatomy of a block, the Genesis block, unpacking Merkle trees, and finally, verification made simple.
All right, Section 1, the chain of blocks, understanding the sequential ledger. Let's dive right in.
So, what actually is a blockchain? At its core, it's exactly what it sounds like. An ordered, backlinked list of blocks of transactions. It acts as a public ledger that records every payment ever made. But the absolute most crucial point here is the end of that definition. It creates a completely trustless system. Instead of having to blindly trust a central bank or some corporate server to keep the books accurately, this structure allows every single participant to independently verify the entire history of the network. You don't have to trust anyone. You just verify the data for yourself.
To really grasp how this ledger stays secure, I absolutely love this geological analogy from the source material. Think of the blockchain like layers in a geological formation. Right at the top, the surface layers, meaning the most recent blocks, well, they might occasionally shift around. That happens during what we call a fork, when different miners discover blocks almost at the exact same time. But that only affects the loose topsoil. As you dig deeper, the layers become incredibly stable. Because every block is linked to the one right before it, altering a block deep in the past forces a massive cascade effect. You'd literally have to mathematically recalculate every single block that came after it. So, a few thousand blocks down, the history is practically set in stone.
And you can physically trace how this chain is formed. Take a look at the top block here, block 277316. Inside its header, there's a field called the previous block header hash. Notice how that big string of alphanumeric characters points directly back to the header hash of the block immediately below it, block 277315. Every single block locks into its parent in this exact way, creating an unbroken chain all the way back to the dawn of the network.
Section 2, anatomy of a block, inside the container data structure.
A block is essentially just a container data structure. Breaking it down, you've got your total block size, a block header, a transaction counter, and then the actual recorded transactions themselves. What I find absolutely mind-boggling here is the massive difference in scale. The transactions make up almost the entire bulk of the size. A complete 32-megabyte block can hold nearly 128,000 transactions. But look at the block header field. It is exactly 80 bytes. That means a full block is roughly 400,000 times larger than its tiny little header.
So what is packed inside that tiny 80-byte header that makes it so critical? We've got the version, the previous block hash that we just talked about, a Merkle root, a timestamp, a target, and a nonce. Now what's really brilliant about this is why the header is kept so incredibly small. By compressing all the essential metadata into just 80 bytes, your own devices can perform critical validity checks almost instantly. You don't need to sit there and download a massive list of 128,000 transactions first. Honestly, it's a masterpiece of efficiency.
Now, really quick before we move on, we need to clarify how we actually identify these blocks, because there are two ways and they are very different. First is the block hash. This is a unique 32-byte digital fingerprint computed dynamically by running that 80-byte header through a cryptographic algorithm. It is completely unique to that exact block. Then you have block height. This is just the block's sequential position in the chain, like saying, this is the 500th block. The height is not a unique identifier, because during a temporary network fork, two competing blocks can actually have the exact same sequential height, but they will never, ever have the same dynamic block hash.
Moving on to Section 3, the Genesis block, the origin of the chain.
Let's take a quick breather here to ask, if every block points to a previous block, where does it all actually start? Well, it starts with the Genesis block, minted back in 2009. This block is statically encoded into the client software. That means it literally cannot be altered. It provides a totally secure, trusted root for every single node. And famously, the creator Satoshi Nakamoto hid a message inside the very first transaction. The Times 3/Jan 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. It acts as a historical timestamp, proving the earliest possible date the block could have been created, and honestly, it's a pretty clear reminder of the financial crisis that inspired this whole independent monetary system in the first place. Okay, Section 4. Unpacking Merkle trees, the binary hash tree. Let's jump right back into that 80-byte header to unpack my absolute favorite component of this whole system, the Merkle root. A Merkle tree is just a clever way to efficiently summarize huge sets of data. Here is the three-step process. Step 1, you take individual transaction data and cryptographically hash it. Step 2, you take consecutive pairs of those hashes, concatenate them, and double hash them together. Step 3, you simply repeat this bottom up over and over again until you are left with just one single hash at the very top. And that final hash, that is your Merkle root.
Let's visualize this, because I promise it makes perfect sense when you see it drawn out. We start at the bottom with 4 transactions, A, B, C, and D. We hash them to get their digital fingerprints. Then, moving up a level, we pair them off. Hash A and hash B get combined and hashed together to create hash AB. Hash C and hash D are combined to create hash CD. Finally, we combine AB and CD to arrive at the single Merkle root at the very top. Boom. This one small root perfectly and mathematically summarizes all 4 transactions below it.
But what if you don't have a perfectly even number of transactions? Since this is a binary tree, it requires an even number of leaves to pair off. On the left is our balanced tree with 4 transactions. But on the right, we've got an unbalanced tree with only 3 transactions, A, B, and C. So how does the system handle this? It elegantly forces a balance by just duplicating the final transaction hash. See how hash C on the right is duplicated? It just pairs with itself to create hash CC, which then pairs with hash AB to form the root. It's such a beautifully simple mathematical workaround. And this brilliantly illustrates how the whole system scales. Here's a Merkle tree mathematically summarizing 16 separate transactions. You can see that wide base of leaves seamlessly pairing off layer by layer, moving up to the exact same fixed 32-byte size root at the very top. Think about that. Whether you have 16 transactions or 128,000 transactions filling a massive 32-megabyte block, this elegant math condenses all of that data into a single 32-byte Merkle root that fits perfectly inside our tiny 80-byte header.
Which brings us to Section 5, Verification Made Simple, how SPV nodes work.
So why go through all this trouble with the math? Let's look at the practical, real-world application here. This structure enables something called Simplified Payment Verification, or SPV. An SPV node is a lightweight client. Think of a crypto app on your phone. It definitely doesn't have the storage space to download a multi-gigabyte blockchain, but thanks to Merkle trees, it doesn't have to. To prove mathematically that the green transaction K is actually included in this block, your phone doesn't need all 16 transactions. It only needs the compact Merkle path. That's those 4 highlighted blue nodes. With just the green transaction and those 4 blue hashes, your device can instantly run the math up to the root and verify that the payment is 100% genuine.
Let the sheer efficiency of this sink in for a second. Look at this number, 512 bytes. If a block is totally full, and we're talking a massive 16-megabyte block holding over 65,000 individual transactions, to mathematically prove that one specific transaction is inside that block, an SPV node only needs a Merkle path of 16 hashes. That equates to just 512 bytes of data. The crucial takeaway here is this. SPV clients only download the 80-byte block headers, and when they need to verify a payment, they receive these tiny Merkle paths. Put together, the SPV client receives less than a single kilobyte of data. That makes it over 1,000 times smaller than downloading a full block. This incredible data structure, relying on cascades of cryptographic hashes and binary trees, is exactly what makes lightweight mobile crypto wallets totally practical and totally secure. Wow, we have covered a massive amount of ground today, zooming all the way from the overarching sequential ledger down to the literal bytes of a Merkle path. We know exactly how these blocks are structured inside and out, how they're verified super efficiently, and how their hashes chain them securely together. But that leaves us with one incredibly provocative final question, right? We know the structure, but how are these blocks actually created in the first place? Well, that introduces the fascinating world of mining and consensus, which is exactly where your curiosity should be pointing next. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.